I've had a great career, and if I had to do one thing different, I think I would have kept writing music. And where I quit writing for years, and I got lazy about that. I really wasn't inspired to write, and for more than 3 decades, George Strait carefully guarded a secret that no one ever suspected. Behind the spotless image of country music's most respected legend, another life was quietly unfolding. Even those closest to him were unaware of what was really happening beyond the spotlight. Now the truth is finally emerging, and it's rewriting everything fans thought they knew. Born George Harvey Strait on May 18, 1952 in the small town of Potted, Texas, George Strait's early years were shaped by the rhythms of rural life and the quiet discipline of farm work. He was raised primarily in nearby Peel, where his family owned and worked a cattle farm. Life there was demanding and often unforgiving, requiring long hours, physical endurance, and a deep respect for responsibility, values that would later become inseparable from Strait's personality and music. When his parents divorced during his childhood, George and his brother were raised by their father, a junior high school mathematics teacher who balanced education with the daily realities of running a farm. That combination of structure and labor instilled in Strait a sense of humility and perseverance that never left him. Music entered his life gradually rather than dramatically. As a teenager in the late 1960s, Strait was drawn to the sounds of traditional country, especially the smooth storytelling of artists like Hank Williams, Merle Haggard, and George Jones. While many young musicians chased trends, Strait found comfort in classic melodies and straightforward lyrics that reflected real life. In high school, he briefly played in a rock and roll garage band, but his heart consistently returned to country music's emotional honesty and simplicity. After graduating from Pearl High School, Strait enrolled in college, but soon interrupted his studies to serve in the U.S. Army in the early 1970s. Stationed in Hawaii, he joined an Army-sponsored country band called Rambling Country, performing for fellow servicemen and local audiences. Those performances marked his first real experience on stage and quietly confirmed that music was more than a hobby. When he returned to Texas later in the decade and resumed college, Strait carried with him not only sharpened musical instincts, but also a deepened maturity, one forged by discipline, distance from home, and a lifelong connection to his roots. In December 1971, at just 19 years old, George Strait married his high school sweetheart Norma Strait, beginning a quiet, steadfast partnership that would become the emotional backbone of his life. Unlike many public figures whose relationships were shaped by fame, George and Norma built their marriage long before success entered the picture. Their bond was rooted in shared history, mutual trust, and a deep understanding of each other's values, qualities that helped sustain them through decades of change. Only a year later, in 1972, the couple welcomed their first child, a daughter named Jennifer. Fatherhood arrived early for Strait, forcing him to mature quickly while still searching for his place in the world. At the time, he was balancing young family responsibilities with military service and uncertain career prospects, often putting stability ahead of ambition. Those early years were far from glamorous, defined more by sacrifice than opportunity. Yet, they strengthened his devotion to home life. Family was never an accessory to success. It was the foundation. As Strait pursued music more seriously in the late 1970s, the demands on his time increased. Long drives, small venues, and modest pay became part of daily life. But Norma remained a steady presence, offering support without seeking attention. She avoided the spotlight entirely, preferring privacy over public recognition, and George respected that boundary throughout his career. Their marriage became a rare constant in an industry known for instability. In 1981, the couple welcomed their son, George Bubba Strait Jr., further solidifying their family unit just as George's career was beginning to gain momentum. Despite the growing pressures of fame, Strait consistently drew a clear line between his professional and personal worlds. He chose family dinners over nightlife, home over Hollywood, and loyalty over excess. This unwavering commitment to marriage and fatherhood not only grounded him personally, but also shaped the sincerity and emotional restraint that would later define his music and public image. June 25, 1986 marked a devastating turning point in George Strait's life. On that summer day in San Marcos, Texas, his 13-year-old daughter, Jennifer Strait, was killed in a catastrophic car accident that shattered the family's sense of normalcy and forever altered Strait's private world. Jennifer had been riding in a Ford Mustang driven by a friend when the vehicle lost control, rolled over and crashed violently. During the accident, she was partially ejected from the car and died instantly. Investigators later confirmed that none of the occupants were wearing seatbelts, a detail that only deepened the tragedy. For George and Norma Strait, the loss was incomprehensible. Jennifer had been the couple's first child and the quiet center of their family life, a presence that grounded George long before fame arrived. In an instant, that foundation was torn away. Those closest to the family described a period of profound grief and withdrawal as the Straits retreated inward to mourn privately. Unlike many public figures who processed tragedy in the public eye, George made a deliberate choice to protect his family from scrutiny. In the years following Jennifer's death, George Strait largely stopped giving interviews, avoided personal questions, and distanced himself from the media almost entirely. His silence was not an act of detachment, but one of survival. Music remained his outlet, yet even then, he rarely spoke directly about his loss, allowing emotion to surface only subtly through tone and restraint, rather than explicit confession. This reserved approach would later become a defining trait of his public persona. The tragedy also reshaped Strait's priorities. Fame, accolades, and commercial success faded in importance compared to preserving what remained of his family. In 1986, the Jennifer Lynn Strait Memorial Foundation was later established to support children's charities, quietly honoring her memory without spectacle. Though time moved forward, the loss never truly left him. Instead, it became a silent companion, one that deepened his humility, strengthened his devotion to privacy, and infused his life and music with a gravity earned through unimaginable pain. In 1987, less than a year after the devastating loss of their daughter George and Norma Strait, made a deeply personal decision to transform grief into purpose by co-founding the Jennifer Lynn Strait Foundation. Rather than seeking public attention or grand recognition, the foundation was created quietly, reflecting the family's enduring preference for privacy. Its mission was simple, but profound: to support children's charities and provide help to young people facing hardship, illness, or instability, causes that held new meaning after Jennifer's death. For the Straits, the foundation became a living tribute to Jennifer's memory, allowing her name to be associated not with tragedy, but with compassion and hope. George and Norma viewed the work not as a single act of charity, but as a lifelong commitment. The foundation focused on organizations that directly improve children's lives, including those addressing healthcare, education, and basic needs, often within Texas communities close to the family's roots. By choosing this path, they ensured that Jennifer's spirit would continue to make a difference far beyond their own family. True to George Strait's reserved nature, the foundation operated largely outside the spotlight. Fundraising efforts were often tied to benefit concerts, private donations, and discreet partnerships rather than high-profile campaigns. Strait rarely spoke publicly about the foundation, allowing the work itself to carry meaning without emotional explanation. This quiet approach underscored the sincerity behind the effort. It was never about public image, but about remembrance and responsibility. Over the years, the Jennifer Lynn Strait Foundation has donated millions of dollars to children's causes, becoming one of the most enduring aspects of Strait's legacy beyond music. For George and Norma, the foundation offered no closure. Such a loss allows none, but it provided a way to channel sorrow into service. Through each child helped, and each organization supported, Jennifer's name continued to represent kindness, resilience, and the enduring love of a family determined to honor her life by helping others. In April 2009, George Strait faced another deeply personal loss with the death of his older brother John Byron, Buddy Strait, who passed away on April 10th at the age of 58. While the tragedy did not unfold under the same public glare as the loss of his daughter decades earlier, it struck a profoundly sensitive place in George's life. Buddy was not just a sibling, but a constant presence throughout George's formative years, someone who shared the same rural upbringing, family struggles, and early lessons learned on the hard ground of Texas soil. Growing up in Pearl, Texas, the Strait brothers were shaped together by farm life, responsibility, and resilience. Buddy had witnessed George long before the spotlight, before sold-out arenas, and record-breaking chart runs when life revolved around chores, school, and the quiet expectations of a working family. That shared history created a bond built less on words and more on experience. For George, losing Buddy meant losing one of the last living links to his earliest self. Unlike public milestones or career triumphs, this loss unfolded privately. George did not issue public